Hi, welcome to Freehandly Made. My name is Denise Patterson, and this is about my journey through my diagnosis and how I got it, and kind of where my journey all began. This is part one of this video series, and then once I get done sharing my diagnosis and that journey, then I'll be doing videos on what it's like to be an Aspie and married. There's a lot of challenges with that, and I think it's nice to be able to share life experiences and hopefully spread awareness and, most importantly, acceptance. Anyway, to get started, my diagnosis journey really began with our son. He is now 6, and we've had problems since the day he was born. So this video is going to be about his diagnosis, and then part 2 will be from his diagnosis how mine started, just so you can get the full picture. So when Zayden was born, he had a lot of medical problems. He was seen by doctors constantly. He had a lot of health issues, and come to find out he was allergic to a lot of things, and so I had to make his formula from scratch and his baby food from scratch. And as he started eating regular food, I had to make that from scratch. Nothing could come from a box, nothing processed, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, you name it. I noticed when he was a baby that we couldn't go anywhere without putting a blanket over his car seat. He would scream really, really bad, just scream. He didn't like the bright light. And then when I'd pick him up from daycare, he would be crying and screaming in the room, and that just hurt my heart. And so I went to the provider, and I asked her, have you tried putting the blanket over the swing? And she said no. And so she tried it, and it stopped. And of course, they did that all the time. And she's like, do you think it's the lighting? I'm like, he must not like the fluorescent lighting in the room. Maybe he's sensitive to it. And then he was a slow walker. When he was in the room with the 1-year-olds, he was the only 1-year-old that wasn't walking, and he would bite because he would feel threatened. You have these other little 1-year-olds that are on their feet and getting in his face, and he felt threatened, and he would bite. And so my husband talked about it, and we're like, maybe it's because of that. So Zayden kind of went through a daddy boot camp, and Zayden was finally on his feet, I would say around 15 months. We finally got Zayden on his feet, and he would still bite, but it wasn't as often. And then he was also delayed in speech. He was 2 before he really started talking, and then it was talking per se, but you couldn't understand him. It was babble, and he would get very frustrated, and so he would point and grunt at what he wanted until we could figure out what it was he was saying. It was just very difficult, and we knew that there were challenges. My gut knew that there was something going on with our son, and we needed to figure out what it was. Because of his health issues, I had to take him out of a conventional daycare where there was a lot of children. His immune system just couldn't handle that many children. Anytime someone got sick, he was sick. He was constantly sick. So we pulled him out of there, and then we put him in a private daycare. It worked out perfectly until he reached age 3. Once he reached age 3, all hell broke loose. He was delayed in potty training and she would get frustrated, and she left him in his dirty diaper as a punishment, and was hoping that if he didn't like the feeling, which of course he didn't, who would, he would be motivated to potty on the potty. And she would have him stand in a corner. And she sent me a video of her doing that to him one time, and was just belittling him and yelling at him, and it pissed me off to the point where I literally yanked him out of her daycare quicker than you could blink, and fired her, and took steps, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And then we transferred him over to a private care center called Step by Step, and I'm going to give them a little plug because this facility is, I can't speak enough about it. They're literally our family away from family. They have been with us every step of the way in this journey. When he first got to the daycare, he had a hard time sleeping in the room with other children, and so for a while he slept kind of by himself. And there were, they had a hard time understanding him too, and I mean, there were issues. There were some major issues, especially once he hit age, he was 3. When he got out of the 3-year-old room and he went into the 4-year room, that's when everything really exploded. He was impulsive, aggressive. He would kick, hit, just doing all kinds of stuff. It was very stressful, very stressful. And so we were able to finally get his pediatrician to assess him. And right away it was like, definitely this is an ADHD issue, but I also knew something else was still there. And so his pediatrician left his diagnosis open, so he listed Zayden as ADHD other. There were things going on with their son, like, I'm going to give you some examples. He wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. He would say mama, 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 until he had to physically see my face before he was okay with getting out of the bed, which made potty training him difficult still, because he would have accidents because he wouldn't get up by himself and go to the bathroom. He wouldn't get up at night and go to the bathroom if he had to go, because it was too dark in the house. So we put night lights up, but then he still wouldn't go because he wouldn't call me to wake up. He twirls, he'll pick hair off the floor or off your clothes. He can find hair anywhere, and he twirls it between his fingers like this, and he gets it into a little ball. And then he'll put his thumb in his mouth, and he'll do this. I know now it's a stemming issue. He wouldn't play with toys like normal toddlers would. For the longest time, he wouldn't play pretend. He wouldn't play with other toddlers. He would sit next to them, but he would be playing by himself. When he played with blocks, he would stack them in, like towers. He would line his toys up on the tub in a line, just things like that. For the longest time, he's gotten better at it, but for the longest time, he would, like when he was doing worksheets or coloring, he would literally feel each crayon before he chose which color he wanted, and then 99% of the time, it would be some form of blue. He is still to this day obsessed with blue. I'm obsessed with purple. He's obsessed with blue. Now, when he does homework, we only give him so many crayons to choose from, and to make it easier. And then he'll do his homework. But free time, we give him the whole box, and he's gotten a lot quicker at picking what color he wants. So that's kind of actually improved just by him growing up. So those are just some examples of the things that he was doing that was atypical. So we had to fight really hard and wait a long time to get him assessed through Child Find. And I learned that there's a difference between an educational diagnosis and a medical diagnosis. There's different criteria, and he at the time that he was assessed, and let me just say, the assessment I don't agree with. It was 30 minutes. 30 minutes of them doing little things with him in an office. That was it. Personally, I think you need more than 30 minutes. They went and they observed him in his classroom, and of course he was perfect behavior that day. And I know the director at Step by Step really wanted them to come back and reassess him, reobserve him on a day where he was having a bad day, because he had more bad days than good. Literally, it was horrible for a while. But there is hope, because it does improve. Once you get everything figured out. So that pretty much went really nowhere, and I didn't agree with the outcome. So I started looking into getting him assessed by someone privately. And the problem is, in the United States, at least in Florida or where we live in the Pensacola area, there's a lot of providers that will not assess a child until they're the age of 6. And there's only like 1 or 2 that will assess a child at the age of 5. And if they're not in your network for your insurance, you're going to pay $1,000 to $1,200 to have the assessment. Well, Sean and I don't have that kind of money, so we had to wait. So finally, in 2017, starting in September, or towards the end of August, we finally found a provider to assess our son, who was willing to assess our son. And he was willing to fight with our insurance to get our insurance to cover it. And it was a fight, but he was able to get it to happen. And now he's within our network. He went ahead and got within our network, so everything's a lot easier now. But he assessed our son. It took a little over a month for all the assessments. And he met with me and my husband a couple of times. And then the final time was to discuss the results. And so we found out that our son is severely ADHD, which that came to know as no surprise. I already kind of knew that. And then also, Zayden is also level 2 on the autism spectrum scale. Now, it goes by levels. Level 3 is the worst, as far as it's I say worst, but severity. As far as severity, level 3 is classic autism. There's a lot of delays. They could be mute. They may have problems with major different functions. They may have issues with eating, textures of food, problems with balance and movement, and just all kinds of those things. Our son has some of those, especially with his speech, and he eats the same kind of foods, although we can entice him to try new things. And we work really hard with him on that. He is slightly above average as far as his assessments on testing for education-wise. The only problem he's struggling really is reading, and obviously that's because of his speech. So we're working on that. He's really good with numbers. Go figure. Gets that from his mama. He's also really good with seek and find situations, puzzles, that kind of thing. So when we had all this done, I started to do a whole bunch of research. And so when we had the meeting with when I had the meeting with the clinician, I'm sorry, I got the hiccups. I can't stop hiccuping. When we had the meeting with the clinician, he was explaining the results and explaining what level 2 is, and he's like, you know, Zayden is kind of like on the higher end of level 2. He may end up being bumped up to level 1 when he becomes an adult, but basically it's like Asperger's. They no longer diagnose it that way. Everything's been rolled under the autism spectrum umbrella now. So, he also said that, you know, he had been observing my husband and I, and he wanted to see if I was willing to have assessments done, and that he hesitates when he asks parents that, because some parents don't take that well. And I jumped on it. I was like, absolutely. I've never been felt okay. I've always felt different, and I know I have ADHD, but I know that there's probably something else going on with me, and I struggle every day. I'm exhausted every day. And so that's where my diagnosis comes in. So I say all this to say that if you have an infant and you're noticing things like they're screaming, and every time you go in the daylight and you have to use a blanket to cover them up, if they have, if they don't make eye contact with you while you're looking in at their face, but they're looking elsewhere, they might be looking at your nose. Pay attention to where they're looking. There's proof that you can actually assess a child to see what their risk is for autism at infancy. The stuff that I have learned since September about this topic is amazing. If I would have known then what I know now, this process probably would have went a lot faster. So I want to share it because I want to make you aware of what to look for in your child, and hopefully my video and what my husband and I have experienced in this journey will help you or help somebody. So please, 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 if you know somebody who is questioning some things, share it. Share it. Through a lot of prayer and a lot of searching the Lord's scripture and support from our church family and our step-by-step family and our parents and stuff, we have been able to solve Zayden's mystery, and all his little quirks and the missing pieces of the puzzle of what was going on are now fitting. He's getting the support he needs. He's getting therapy that he needs, and it's helping us learn how to be the parents that he needs us to be. The goal with our son is not to teach him how to be normal. I don't agree with that. God made him special for a reason, and so we have decided to embrace his diagnosis, and we have decided to teach him how to be okay with who he is and love himself for who he is. And those people that can accept who he is will be in his life, and those who can't will not. God is very good at shifting people out of your life and he's very good at bringing people in your life. So that's our goal for our son. Obviously, to teach him how to function in our world today in a healthy way is important, like hygiene, cleanliness of the home, and study habits at school, and some social cues. Social cues will help him, and he just has to learn how to do those things differently. Now, but he's still going to be that amazing, quirky little, I say little kid. He'll always be my little boy, but you know what I mean. He'll still have those characteristics. It's just he will have some tools in his belt to learn how to deal with the anxiety and those things when they arise, and still be okay with who he is, and realize that he's different. He's not less, and he was made for a special purpose. So that's our goal for our son. We don't believe in ABA therapy at all. I just don't agree with the way that therapy is conducted, and I'm not trying to change my son, and I'm not trying to cure my son. There's nothing wrong with my son that has to be cured. He just needs to learn how to do life in a different way. His brain is just wired a different way. So with that said, I'm going to end this video, and I will see you again for part 2, and we'll discuss how my son's diagnosis led to mine. If you have any questions, you can send an email to me. freehandedlymade73@gmail.com, and you can also find Freehanded Made by God is a Facebook page, and that is my personal blog. So you can find me on both places. Please feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. Have a blessed day.